by the time the language came out, it was not what I think we'd agreed to. We remedied that as to do an amendment.
Is that right?
It just makes them a priority. Because they're already being served. They're already being served by that other money.
No money on being on the council. She's trying with CNE. Okay, bill service. Yeah. Said he had announced that he was gonna.
Call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. this Monday, November the 14th. Todd, would you do the invocation for us?
Gracious and Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to ask for your guiding hand upon the Cherokee Nation. Please bless the council with wisdom to do what is your will. Please protect those that are away from their loving families' protection. Provide for those who are having hard times and may not be able to provide for their families' needs. We ask of you not to let none of us go to bed hungry, go without the love of our families, not let the sick be without medicine, and provide all of us with a light heart. We ask of these in your name. Amen.
Written roll call.
Bill England,
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Julia Coates.
Here.
Jody Fishinghoff. Meredith Fraley. Here. Janelle Fulbright.
Here.
Don Garvin.
Honey.
Chuck Hoskin Jr. Here. China Florrick Jordan.
Present.
Lee Keener.
Honey.
Dick Wade.
Here.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton. Present. David Walkingstick. Eric Allen Watts.
Honey,
We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. The next order of business is approval of the October 10 regular session minutes.
So moved.
second.
Moved in second that the minutes be approved as written. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes approved as written. Next, we have State of the Nation. Bill John Baker, Principal Chief.
Good evening. With Thanksgiving just 10 days away and Christmas decorations starting to pop up, I'd like to focus my remarks on programs that work to give a hand up to our brothers and sisters. In just the last 6 weeks, our behavioral health services team has secured 7 grants from the state and federal governments, totaling more than $7.6 million. Several of these grants will go to programs to serve our youth, including multi-year awards for teen suicide prevention, for the Building Hope and Walking the Trail, which are culturally based teen substance abuse and prevention programs. Grants that will also create and fund additional jobs within the tribe, providing more employment opportunities for our Cherokee citizens in the 14 counties. Our education department recently announced that a number of students receiving college scholarships is up by 20%. More than 3,000 students receiving financial aid and from the tribe this semester. Given the continued economic uncertainty of our country, higher education is becoming even more important for our people and our nation. Although there is economic uncertainty, our career services programs are funding ways to provide some stability on the local level. On October 13th, our career services group picked up 2 awards from the state of Oklahoma at the Economic Development Summit at Rogers State University in Claremore. The first, stemming from a partnership with the state of Oklahoma's Workforce Program and Northeastern Oklahoma's Regional Association, is the Work Ready Communities state recognition. This partnership across the 14 counties produced a higher Work Ready certification than the Tulsa and Oklahoma City metro areas. The second award was presented to a second group from Career Services, along with Deputy Chief Joe Crittenden and District 5 Counselors Lee Keener and Kara Cowan-Watts for the tribe's Workforce Development Work Ready Communities program. That $5,000 award can be put towards future economic development or to offset cost of attending next year's summit. Along with the Career Services Award, the Talking Leaves Job Corps Culinary Arts Program was also recognized last month, picking up a second place at the Iron Chef contest in Little Rock. At this time, if we could have that culinary arts team come forward. Let me read them. We have Linda Lear. Which one's Linda? Oh, sorry. We have Noah White, Victoria Norbit, and Kendra Marshall. We appreciate it so much because we all like to eat so well. Our Commerce Group has recently received a $725,000 Community Development Assistance Award from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. This money includes funding for small loan program and to prevent home foreclosures, and to assist community groups, including those that rely on renewable grants. Over the next few weeks, the group will also be hosting workshops on money management, budgeting, and banking in the Tahlequah, Claremore, Tulsa, and OK. In the coming weeks, our COTA program will be choosing among 29 nonprofit groups that have applied for one of our $7,500 community subgrants. The awards will be used for projects and activities that focus on building Cherokee-led organizations. By working to help and provide a hand up for those who need it, these departments are truly helping us take the first steps of moving the Cherokee Nation from good to great. I ask you to join me in remembering the men and women wearing our country's uniform, knowing that there are many families that will not be complete this season. This time, I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Joe Crittenden to come forward and introduce the 2 veterans, Michael Greer and Benny Ross.
It's my privilege to, as we honor these 2 veterans this evening. The first veteran is Michael Greer. Michael, if you'd come down, please. I'm going to read a little about you here. Okay. Michael was born on February the 29th, 1976 at W.W. Hastings Hospital to Marie Greer of Tahlequah and Mike Jones of Plano, Texas. He joined the Marines in March of '97. His first duty station was in Okinawa, Japan, 3rd FSSG at Camp Kinzer and Camp Foster to Supply Battalion. Mike was picked to serve in CSSD 39 in warfare training, where he learned patrol techniques, tactical considerations, weapons, and fire support. He went on a 6-month float that took him to Hong Kong, the Philippines, Thailand, where he trained with the Royal Thai Marines, then on to Australia from '97 to '99. From '99 to 2000, Mike was assigned to Norfolk Naval Base for 6 months and then got orders to Quantico, Virginia for 5 months. From 2000 to 2001, Mike got orders to Camp Pendleton, California, 22nd area. Again, Mike was picked to go to 29 Palms Marine Corps Base Ground Training Force for pre-deployment training in more patrol techniques, tactical consideration, weapons, and fire support. After that, Mike went to Pickle Meadow, California for Winter Mountain Course. There he was trained to work in cold weather and have operations on ice and snow-covered terrain. He was taught avalanche rescue, mountain patrol techniques, and the necessary skills for survival. Among Mike's awards are the Good Conduct Medal, Navy Achievement Medal, Sea Service Ribbon, Meritorious Mast, Certificate of Appreciation, Rifle Expert Badge for award. Mike now works at Hastings Hospital and is married to Natasha Ross. They have 2 children. And I have something for you, sir. This is your Warrior Award and a medal. And if you will, I'd like to pin this on your shirt. I'll leave this one in here.
Cherokee County Council people would come up and have your picture made, please.
If I stick you, sir, I didn't do it on purpose. This is not even-
He's got a daughter here.
Oh, yes, okay.
Would you like to say anything, sir?
Just keep the prayers for the people, the men and women that are still overseas, till they all get back home. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers. 'Cause I've lost friends that's over there, the same unit I was in, so that's all I ask.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. The next serviceman we want to honor tonight is Benny Ross. Benny, would you come down, please? Benny Ross was born December the 28th, 1930 in Welling, Oklahoma. He married Ruth Briggs of the Willis community. In 1951, at the age of 21 years, he enlisted in the Army during the Korean War. He served with the 151st Engineer Battalion combat for 3 years. Corporal Benny Ross was honorably discharged in December of 1954 and came home to his wife Ruth and their 2 children. After his return to the States, Benny and his family moved to Los Angeles, California as part of the BIA Indian Relocation Program. He and Ruth's family grew to include 6 children. Benny went to work for the Seal Right Company of Los Angeles and remained with the company for 38 years until his retirement. After his retirement, he and his wife came back home to Tahlequah. Mr. Ross is 7/8 Cherokee, a fluent speaker, and is extremely proud of his Cherokee heritage. And sir, I'd like to give you a Warrior Award this evening on behalf of the Cherokee Nation and your service. And that alone, I can't. Half of an inclusive nation. Independence of that right here. Promise me I won't stick you, okay? Just as sure as I say that, I will. No, I won't. Come around here, man. Okay.
Benny, would you like to say something?
Well, I'm proud that I'm a Cherokee. Proud of Cherokee County, I guess. I live, I was born well in Oklahoma now. I've got a place at Grandview. And it's my home. And I was married to Bruce Brooks, 56 years.
Pretty much, I just wanted to thank everybody for bearing with me and wish everybody a happy holiday season. And, God bless each and every one of you. God bless America, and God bless the Cherokee Nation. Thank you.
Allow me, we have a plaque to present to Mr. Baker for his many long years of service on the tribal council. Bill, do you have that over there? It's kind of heavy. Sherry, do you want to come help him carry it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you all so much.
That's from, on behalf of the tribal council, presented to Mr. Baker for his long years on the tribal council. He served you well, and we appreciate it. You want to get I asked him if he wanted to say a few words, and one of the first things he told me when I got on the council was he never met a Mike he didn't like.
And I do appreciate it so much from each and every one of you, and it was an honor and a privilege to serve on the tribal council, and it is probably where my heart really is with the People's Branch. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. There being no unfinished business pending, we move on to committee reports, and David Sutherland with Housing Authority. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Have a brief report for you this evening.
The November Housing Authority Board meeting will be tomorrow. It'll begin at noon in the Allen Hogner Conference Room. The board has a light agenda with the only item being a discussion on the development of new housing. At the direction of the new administration, we're making plans to begin building houses. That'll take a few weeks to get everything into place. We're excited to get started. Once we get a program that we're going to do, we'll make sure that the council's aware of that and what we're doing. We've been monitoring the Indian Housing Block Grant funding bills that are in the Senate and the House. I attended a National American Indian Housing Council meeting in Phoenix. It's been 2 or 3 weeks ago. As you all are aware, the House funding bill contains language that would insert a deadline on when the housing funds have to be spent. It also contains language that would prohibit funding from tribes with more than $20 million in the pipeline. We don't have that. We're under $20 million in the pipeline, so that really doesn't affect us right now, but it could if it's added to the language. The purpose of the Phoenix meeting was to put together a unified position for the National American Indian Housing Council to present on the Hill in D.C. when they're doing some lobbying efforts and things of that nature. There were approximately 15 elected tribal leaders in attendance, and they were given an opportunity to speak. And when they did, they all agreed that the unified position should be to endorse the Senate bill, which includes more funding than the House version, but doesn't contain the language that I spoke about on the House bill. Well, also, the Cherokee Nation staff in the D.C. office was at that meeting and are keeping tabs on those funding bills and keeping us informed of any movement. But anything that happens on those two bills that you all need to know about, I'll make sure that you all are made aware of it. That's my report for the evening. Just like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and that's it unless you have any questions.
Questions or comments from Mr. Sutherland? Yes, Councilman Watts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Sutherland, just to clarify, in order to build the homes, it will come to us in the form of an amendment to the Indian Housing Plan?
Yes, there will be some Indian Housing Plan funds used for that, so it'll have to be amended.
Okay, and then of course, what I heard was, and I wanted to make sure my mind was clear, was you would have specifics that you would be brought to
Yes.
us in that plan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Any other questions, Mr. Martin?
Yes, David, in the meeting today, I asked you to remember Marble City and McCut, and I'm asking you again.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions, comments? Thank you, David, for that brief report. Next report is Cherokee Nation Business, David Stewart. Mr. Sutherland and Mr. Stewart are very busy gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It has been a busy month. As we report for August, our financial results continue to be strong, and we expect to close the year very close to budget with all of our companies in good health. We also completed our budget for 2012, and I'm always amazed at how large we've become. Our total revenues for 2012 will exceed $700 million, with about $220 million being from diversified companies. So we continue this effort and to diversify, and so we're excited about that. With over about 5,000 employees expected by the end of next year. Sometimes we talk a lot about the money, but our employees are very active, and I'm also amazed at how much they like to get involved. We have a community impact team, and for 2011, we have 425 employees as members of that team throughout the company. And they've a few statistics. Total volunteer hours exceed 5,000. The American Diabetes Association fundraising, they raised $25,000. For Big Brothers and Sisters, they rose about $12,000. Blood donations exceed 617 pints, and 48 pints of blood went directly to the Cherokee Nation. Our volunteers from C&B staff Junior Achievements BizTown, which is a business, a replica of the Phoenix, where youth participated and learned how to run a business. We had the groundbreaking for the new hotel tower at Hard Rock. We opened the John Ross Museum, and a couple of awards. Cherokee Services Group was named #1 in the Journal Records, Tulsa's Fast 40. And this is one of the top, the fastest growing companies in the area, and that's one of our subsidiaries. So just a couple of things we're doing. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Gordon?
Yes, Mr. Stewart, I'd like to ask a question. Besides the C and B companies, or the C and E company and the C and I company, how many different companies are they other than those two?
Well, we have about 10 different active companies that work in 5 different industries.
Are any of these companies inside Cherokee Nation other than C and E and C and I?
Well, we have some subsidiaries of the company. There's about 4 or 5 that are in the 14 counties, and we have 3 or 4 or 5 that are not. The headquarters of those companies are here, however. So we have employees outside the 14 counties, but we have the headquarters, the administrative staff, the CEO, and some of the top management here.
How many of those outside the state?
I think 3 or 4.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, the companies are here, but we have employees all over the United States.
Any other questions, comments? Congratulations on the payment that you're giving back to the government. I understand this year it's increased by 19% to 26 million.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
And our retail sales tax that we give back to the nation is in excess of $250,000 a month. So that's going up.
Great, thank you. Next order of business is old business, there being none pending. We move to new business. The first item is legislation establishing a scholarship program for high school students taking college courses. Mr. Walkingstick, did you want to present that?
The purpose of this act is to create a scholarship program to benefit Cherokee High School students residing in the Cherokee Nation Scholarship Program service area who are currently enrolled in an accredited public or private institution of higher learning. I'd like to put this into a form of motion.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? This is an act you want by acclamation. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Out of Resource Committee, we have the second item is a resolution donating personal property to Northeastern State University. Mr. Snell.
Yes, this is a resolution authorizing the donation of personal properties in this year. The property consists of letter-sized metal shelving from the Real Estate Services Block to Northeastern State University. I'll put that in form of a motion.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 3, this act covers placing land in trust by 4 Native American tribes. Mr. Keener, did you want to bring that forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to put this in the form of a motion. This act would give the procedures for application for putting land into trust.
Second.
Moved in second. Ms. Coate?
Yeah, I would like to offer a friendly amendment to Mr. Keener. We have an act in front of us, which is, the intent of which is substantially the same, but which has more refined language and more clarifying language, and I wondered if you would accept this act as a friendly amendment.
I'll accept.
I do. As a second.
Any further discussion?
I would ask that Todd come forward and explain to us the differences. This thing was just kind of sprung on us today, and I thought that was what our committee was for.
That's my fault. I just finished it today.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The effect of the amendments would be to replace some of the language that had been deleted at committee. As you well know, any piece of legislation that comes through the committee process, when it comes to the floor, can be amended or passed or rejected at full council. So basically, the process starts over again. So what has happened here is that the proponents of the legislation have looked at it and said, these are some additional items that we would want put back into or put into the legislation. It was properly moved by Mr. Keener, seconded by Ms. Karen Watts. We've often used the friendly amendment process. It has been accepted by both the person moving the legislation and the second, so it is properly before the council at this time. It is properly before.
Differences?
The differences.
Yeah, that's what I asked you about.
Okay. Well, I think it would be well and good to go back through them. I don't have a colored copy here in front of me. It required, the original legislation required the 2/3 vote to the council. And I'm looking at section 5B right now. It placed, again, this was language that was in the original act that passed through committee, but it's moved to higher up the paragraphs. The principal chief and the officers of the Cherokee Nation may be enjoined by the courts of the Cherokee Nation to carry out this obligation. B, granting except as authorized under 5A above, neither the principal chief nor any other officer of the Cherokee Nation may authorize or consent to establishment of federal trust status for land within the jurisdictional boundaries of the Cherokee Nation by any foreign Native American tribes or members thereof. Here, it would add for individual members where the original legislation contemplated federally recognized tribes. C, except as authorized under 5B, which requires a 2/3 vote, above, neither the principal chief nor any other officer of the Cherokee Nation shall have the authority to consent to or otherwise authorize the acquisition of land in federal trust status by any foreign Native American tribe or members thereof, again adding individuals. The grant of such consent or assuming notice has been received, a failure to object to land into trust status by foreign Native American tribes or any members thereof within the nation's jurisdictional area of the Cherokee Nation without resolution required in Section B shall subject the officer to injunctive relief through the Cherokee Nation, and Section 5B above shall be considered willful neglect of duty as defined as Article 11 of Section 1 of the Cherokee Nation Constitution. That language was, or similar language was in the original act. It was taken out of committee and now it's placed back into the act. Basically saying that it will be considered willful neglect of duty under the Constitution if the principal chief or an officer consents to land being taken into trust within our jurisdiction without first approving the 2/3 vote resolution.
So the difference appears to be the last sentence in C?
That's the major difference, and other than the also requiring individuals or having individuals come into the purview of this.
I thought we discussed at length this part that's been added back in committee.
There was substantial discussion on it.
So this is,
Neglect is what is required in our Constitution, and I think originally they had, it was crime or something like that.
Yes.
This is not the
well,
same.
what we left committee with was shall
Injunctive
sub,
relief,
yeah, injunctive relief.
Under the Constitution, it requires, defined as willful neglect. And so whenever I was reading that, I took it from the Constitution.
So this is already, in your opinion, covered by the Constitution?
Yes, ma'am.
So why
The
are
willful
we,
neglect part of it, not injunctive relief, willful neglect.
but if this whole area is already covered by the Constitution, why are we passing it at all?
Because we need a definition of what is required. This is pretty serious stuff when you put land in trust. When another tribe comes within our jurisdiction to put land in trust, that's pretty serious. And it also includes not only the principal chief, but the officers of the Cherokee Nation.
I'm not against this act, but I want it worded right. And I think that this being, and it's through no fault of your own, but this being sprung upon us this late date, I would ask that we table this so that we can take it back to committee and make sure our wording is exactly right. So I would like to do a motion to table.
A motion to table and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Aye. Roll call, yes is to table.
Don Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Tina Glory Jordan,
Yes.
Lee Keener,
No.
Dick Blake,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
No.
David Walkingstick,
Yes.
Kara Callan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Jack Baker,
No.
Julia Coates,
No.
Jody Fishinghawk,
Yes.
Meredith Rayleigh,
No.
Janelle Fulbright.
No.
We have 6 yes and 9 no.
Six yes and 9 no, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to table fails.
And Madam Speaker, I do want to stand corrected that the substantial discussion on the legislation in committee had the wording of crime, and it has been changed to willful neglect of duty. I want to make that point clear.
Mr. Hopkins, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Did I understand Todd to say that willful neglect of duty had been in what passed out of committee, or it is part of what's being substituted?
It's what is being.
And I wanted to clarify for the record, the original language of the proposed legislation shall be considered a crime.
We substituted that with injunctive relief.
Correct.
Because the committee was satisfied that an injunction would essentially stop in the tracks any sort of placement of land into trust. It would keep us out of the realm of calling it a crime. And I think there was some concern, certainly expressed by me at committee, that calling it a crime would raise issues of, well, at what point did the chief fail to object to land being placed into trust? Is it a crime, 5 minutes after something comes off the fax machine saying it's in trust? I mean, that gets into some dicey areas that were unnecessary, so I felt injunctive relief was sufficient. Still feel it's sufficient. So the issue now is whether we need to make the failure to act on the part of not just the chief, Madam Speaker, but all of the officers. The failure to act, I'm not so much concerned about the act of trying to place foreign land into trust without a resolution as provided for under this act. I'm concerned about the failure to act, and at what point has the person engaged in willful neglect of duty. Well, this doesn't define that. It somewhat concerns me that it implicates this very serious section of the Constitution without fleshing that out a bit in the legislation, which is why I think tabling it would have been the prudent move. I don't think anyone is seriously concerned that in a month's time, foreign tribes are going to place land into trust. So I'm somewhat disappointed we didn't take what I think is the more prudent course and put this back into committee. We haven't done that. We're poised to consider this at the moment. Todd, would you, if I could, Madam Speaker, Todd, would you refresh our memory as to the article of the Constitution that's cited? Is that a basis for removal, or is that, per se removal if someone engages in willful neglect of duty?
You don't go very many places without my Cherokee Constitution.
Yes.
Article 11, Section 1. And it's a short section, I'll just read it into the record. Article 11, removal from office. Section 1, the principal, deputy chief, members of the council, attorney general, and marshal shall be subject to removal from office for willful neglect of duty, corruption in office, habitual drunkenness, incompetency, or any conviction of a felony or a crime under the laws of the Cherokee Nation that committed in some other jurisdiction would be a felony, or a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude or offenses against the Cherokee Nation committed while in office. So willful neglect of duty is a triggering event if someone's accused of that. And also Article 11 has some due process provisions about how that trial is to come about.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Madam Speaker, I wonder if I suppose I should direct this to Councilman Coates. She's offered as a substitute, but under Section C, Section 5C, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down, where it says assuming notice has been received, would the councilwoman agree to assuming actual notice has been received? And Madam Speaker, this would get us out of the gotcha scenario where someone says, well, there's been constructive notice, there's been, the chief knew or should have known that there was some action to place land in trust. This requires that there be some burden of proof on the accuser that there's been actual notice of the placement of land in trust. It really is a mild change, but I think an important one, and I would offer that in the form of a friendly amendment.
That would include not only the principal chief, but also that the tribal council has actually been informed?
Well, it would operate on all the officers that are subject to Section
Right.
5C, Madam Speaker, if I could. And I don't think the council's actually, well, I guess the council is subject to Section 5C, which again is some additional language that we debated, I think, to some extent at council and expressed some concern over councilors being implicated for failure to voice an objection, which will bring me to a whole other topic, so I should digress. But Madam Speaker, would the council lady agree to that as a friendly amendment?
I'd want to ask first of Mr. Hembry and of our Attorney General, Ms. Hammonds, if what is the process? I mean, because this is a very, very unusual situation in all of the United States, I think, for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, perhaps to even be contemplating placing land into jurisdiction by one tribe of another tribe. I mean, this is unheard of, anywhere else, it seems like. So what do we even know if the tribe whose jurisdiction is in question would actually even be notified by the Bureau? What would the process even look like if this were to take place? That would be my question before I could respond.
Mr. Hembry or Ms. Hammonds?
I defer to
Defer to her, Ms. Hammonds.
our Attorney General. I did not say that. I thought.
I can tell you what I know by experience, and that is, for example, we just had one I received today from Real Estate Services where the BIA sent formal notice to us with an opportunity of X number of days to voice our objection. So that does formally come into the nation in written form. I believe that would establish actual notice to the officials.
And this is a piece of land in trust for an individual, for another tribe?
It's for another tribe within our boundaries.
And you have received this today?
Yes, ma'am.
So Mr. Hoskins' assertion that this is unlikely to happen within 1 month this has already happened. Is that?
I received the notice today. I think Real Estate Services may have received it in the last couple of days.
So it's a very good thing we did not table this, perhaps. I will accept that under the provision that this is not only to the principal chief, but it is to all of the officers that are involved, the tribal council as well, once we have actually officially been notified also. Is that?
Still have the floor, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Hoskins, you still have the floor.
And I appreciate her accepting the friendly amendment. And just to be clear, it would put the word actual between assuming and notice under Section 5C. I wonder if, and Todd, you may not know, you're not the author of this provision, but what is a scenario under which a council member will have failed to object pursuant to this act?
That's a good question. I wasn't just looking at myself on the TV. There is, I mean, one could argue, okay, that if you didn't pass a resolution, well, then you failed to object. Now, if it wasn't brought before to you for the resolution, well, you never had an opportunity to
In what
object.
time period, though? I mean, we as a body and the Speaker of the Council has the ability to call a special meeting, I believe. If a speaker fails to do that, has he failed to act? Is he willfully neglecting it? I mean, these are the kind of questions that are very useful to study in committee. And even though there's been this news that we've got this request for land in the trust, I still think it's not an excuse to be hasty on this language. This is not a matter of simple refinement to the language. As a colleague just pointed out, that this substitute is a substantial rewrite of the whole bill. But I do get concerned about this idea of when a council member gets notice, what is his obligation? What is his obligation to act, and what if he fails to meet that obligation? Is it willful neglect of duty? And that, frankly, is not outlined in this. It gives us next to no guidance going forward, and it subjects council members to removal from office. There's a lot of serious matters. That is a serious matter, that an elected official be removed from office for failure to comply with the statute. What does the statute require? That's a question that's been posed that no one's been able to give an answer to, and yet we're poised to pass this. So that's what troubles me.
Mr. Hoskin, are you finished?
I think there was a question in there at the top, but I probably muddied it up so much that.
I missed it.
Madam Speaker.
But in any case, that's my concern, and I yield back. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, given that there was a question posed to me in terms of would I accept, I'm actually going to rescind my acceptance of it at this point, because discovering that this happened today to the Attorney General, maybe a few days ago to Real Estate Services, and that tonight is the first time that the Tribal Council is hearing about this very, very serious issue, I'm not having a lot of confidence at this point that this body is being informed of these very substantive things that are going on. And the question about how long, well, I have a question about how long before the Tribal Council gets notification on some of these things, and I think that, so I'm on reconsideration, I'm not going to accept this as a friendly amendment, because the evidence seems to be, at least in this one instance, that we have no reason to expect that this body at least will be actually informed when these very serious matters happen.
Ms. John Wallace.
Thank you. I am greatly concerned that we're under the attack by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and specifically Assistant Secretary Echo Hawk. I mean, he made it very clear, even within our own jurisdiction when he showed up, that he is very friendly, and specifically, I believe the terms and the words he's used in his letters and what he's said publicly is that he considers a foreign tribe equal to us in our own jurisdiction. This is absolutely an extremely serious issue, and there's no way that the Bureau of Indian Affairs should govern us and tell us what to do. And so they've made it very clear what their intentions are. You know, historically, I think the blood laws would have been applicable in this instance, because for us, the jurisdiction and the land was our most valuable asset in terms of defining our sovereignty and our nation, and that we did not give up our land to anyone else. And I think that's still true today for the majority of Cherokees. So I would hate to know that anyone would go along with such a plan to put foreign tribes' land into trust within our own jurisdiction. So we rely heavily that we would have checks and balances within our government. But it's a different deal if we allow something for the federal government to happen. How are we going to check and balance that if it's already out the door and the barn door is open, so to speak? So I think what's important here is we're not even discussing the actual mechanism within this act. This act makes sure that the government would object to such land into trust in our jurisdiction from an outside tribe, which apparently we're already greatly at risk for because it's already happening. So what this does is if we do not object, it would require 2/3 of the tribal council body to relinquish that land and put it into trust for another tribe. We're at risk from 3 different tribal entities, potentially within our jurisdiction, to have land into trust. How we would manage that logistically, who would have law enforcement obligations, who would get money associated with it. I mean, we would have a number of issues that I don't think anyone's prepared to address, let alone the federal government. So I think it's very important that we rely on the executive office to make sure that these things do not happen, and that once we're notified, there's always a time frame specified on our time to object. And we rely on that branch of government to object within that time frame, and that's happened for years. But there's indication by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and EchoHawk that that won't be the case. And we're greatly at risk, and we want to make sure that proper checks and balances are here to protect the jurisdiction of the Cherokee Nation, and one of our most important assets are our tribal lands. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Lay.
Ms. Hammonds, could I ask you a question or two?
Certainly.
Could you run down the timeline and the scenario as to who got this information and when you got it and why weren't our elected officials notified of this immediately?
First, let me say that this is not the first time this has happened. We have received applications, copies of notifications of applications for land to be taken into trust at least 4 times that I can remember, and it may be more than that.
But this is this time. That's what I'm asking
This is this one. I received it today in an email from Real Estate Services. A copy of it was attached. It was dated November 4th. Our time to respond is within 30 days from November 4th. So December 3rd.
November 4th till now, this is the first we hear of it. This just can't be happening here.
Speaks to the act.
I received it by email today.
I understand. I hope that somebody looks into this and sees why you weren't notified quicker and why you didn't notify us quicker. That's, thank you.
Sure. Mr. Wilkinson.
Well, this is the first time I heard about this change in this resolution, but anyways, if the BIA denies our objection, as far as putting land in the trust, is it a willful neglect of duty as far as the council and the chief and deputy chief? If the BIA denies our objection?
No. I mean, if this legislation passes and you've exercised your duties imposed upon you by our statute, then what the BIA does doesn't affect your duty that you've performed.
Okay. Ms. Fisher-Hawk?
Yes, I'd just like to echo what Mr. Lay said. Is the chief back there behind you, Diane? Stand up, Bill John. I have not liked in the past, and you know I haven't, how the former administration kept stuff from us. We just now heard the Attorney General say she knows of 4 times Chad Smith and his administration did not tell us. I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect it out of yours.
And I found out about it the same time you did.
Okay. Well, would you please check into that, because that is rather serious.
Guaranteed.
Thank you. And the other question I have is maybe just being a little picky or cleaning up, but I do have a question for Todd. Todd, I sit here while everybody was debating, and I looked at section 5. It starts at the bottom of the page, and it goes about 2/3 down the other page. It's all the red. Well, while I was sitting here, I started counting the words. I found out exactly there is 21% of black words left, and 79% are the red changes. I have been preached to by Madam Speaker, of course, and I know she ain't gonna get mad at me for saying this. Stuff that comes out of committee does not come up here to this council and get changed. We have always set that procedure, we have always said it. You do not make substantial changes on full council. You don't do it. You take it back to committee, work it up, and do it again. Now, when I am looking at an act that has 80% changed, at what line do we say that, Madam Speaker? 80%, 20% of it is the same. And I'm gonna tell you right now, out of that 20%, quite a bit of it is Cherokee Nation, Principal Chief, Tribal Council, of, the, and. The important words. So when do we say, okay, this is totally different from what we passed out of committee? And that is a question for you and you.
The first question, or the question is it proper? Yes, it is, as I explained to you earlier, that when a piece of legislation, according to Robert's Rules of Order, comes through committee and goes to the full body, which is in this case the tribal council, the process starts over again. You can substantially change a piece of legislation on the floor at full council. It has happened in the past. It's very rare that it happens, but it has happened in the past. So therefore, substantial changes can be made.
That's what you and Meredith preached to us. And I,
I said it could be. I said, it is proper under Robert's Rules of Order. Okay. Now, whether it is good legislative practice, that is a decision this body makes. Okay. Is it proper under Robert's Rules of Order? Yes, it is. And whether it's a good legislative process is a question you all answer.
you want to weigh in?
No, I agree with you, Jody. It isn't good to bring things at the last minute, but sometimes it happens when circumstances are beyond our control, whatever, it does happen, but no, it is not good practice to do that. Because like someone said, I'd like to give, I think she said you'd like to give it more thought. Well, it's here before us, and this is pretty serious, and it needs to be taken care of. Next time, I'll just go, don't bring that late again.
I wish you would do that too. Thank you.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes. Madam Chair, I kind of feel like you. I think this is a very, very important process that we need to go through. I think our sovereignty is being encroached upon. And from what I've heard here tonight, putting land into trust in this act, in my thoughts, should be passed tonight. In my thoughts, it needs to be put in the books. And our next rules meeting, we can go in and we can change if we want to. It's not anything set in concrete. All these council people here have the right to bring forward changes. And they don't have to ask if it could be added to this. You know, they can bring forth the change, we can vote on it. And so I think this is a very, very important case as far as an act. I voiced, objection to the BIA, and I know that several colleagues here will do the same. And I know that there's no way that we can file a suit against the BIA. We can just say we don't agree. We have at least 4 tribes here in the nation. I've been contacted by 2 of the tribes in this nation. And they're telling me if one tribe can receive land in trust, why can't they receive land in trust? And the 2 that contacted me was the Delaware and the Shawnee. And, I can see where we can start losing our land base. And if we don't fight, if we don't stand up here and fight for this now, I'm going to guarantee you, they're going to jump on you and they're going to take your land if they can take it. Because it improves their situations in the way that they can get that money. And that revenue means a whole lot to everybody right now, and every tribe. And you know that as well as I know that. And the willful neglect of duty, if we don't stand up and say, no, I feel, that's a willful neglect of duty and of the Constitution. So I want you to remember, there's another tribe came in here a few years back, and they thought maybe they could get
that land put into trust because they bought a racetrack right down in Sequoia County at Blue Ribbon Downs. And they could only put 100 machines in there, and they was losing $2 to $3 million a year. And they was trying their best to get that land put into trust. And I want you to realize that it's out there, and it's coming, and it's not going to stop. It's just like another situation we had here in the past that was coming and wasn't going to stop, and I told you about it, but I don't want to bring it up right now. But anyway, that's, you know, I can't understand why we can't go ahead and pass this act and then come back and change it if we need changes to it. There's no problem there with me. So that's the way I feel about it. Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Thornton, Ms. Coates, yeah. Ms. Coates and then Mr. Hoskin.
I don't know how many people here are familiar with something that is known as the Navajo-Hopi land dispute. This is a dispute between two tribes, one of them very large and the other very small, that was set off by uninformed, ignorant, inept action on the part of the Indian Service in the 1870s. And this dispute has gone on for 140 years. It has caused tremendous enmity between these two tribes. It has caused dislocation of over 10,000 people. It's been a colossal mess that they've been trying to deal with for generation after generation after generation. And to me, what is about to possibly happen here has all the smell of the origins of the Navajo-Hopi land dispute, that this will set something off that we will spend generation after generation after generation trying to find some sort of amicable resolution to an extremely competitive situation that will be opened up that just doesn't have any end to it. And as everybody has said, this is not just one tribe. These are 4 tribes at least, and others coming from the outside as well, trying to carve up a jurisdiction so that it'll look like shredded paper, Swiss cheese. You take your pick of whatever kind of visual image you want to look at here. We have an example already of a tribe that took essentially jurisdiction away from us with the blessing of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and without any involvement on the part of the Cherokee Nation. And this was the Delaware Nation, of course, in the early 1990s. And to think that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is the final say about this is just flat out wrong. And the Delaware example proves that, because when we took that issue into court, we won. And that's something that we have to remember. We have already won cases involving other tribes trying to assert jurisdiction within our territory, and repeatedly in numerous cases, the federal courts have agreed that this territory is the exclusive jurisdiction of the Cherokee Nation. So we do not have to cower in fear on this. We are on good legal footing. There are already a number of precedents to back this up. The thing about putting land into trust and competing jurisdictions, it's only the beginning of it. In 1828, when this land was ceded to the Cherokee Nation by treaty, all governmental interests went with that cession of land. Governmental interests are things like hunting and fishing rights, water rights, mineral rights. This doesn't end with simply putting land into trust. This will extend to all of those other interests as well, where we will have 4 tribes trying to go after all of those kinds of rights as well. This opens up something that will just, it'll be a nuclear explosion that just will not stop. And so the penalties to me of injunctive relief, this is slapping somebody on the wrist. It has no impact. It's no kind of threat. This body did not agree with making this a crime. I did in committee meetings, because That's what it has been for our ancestors. Anytime our ancestors did this, this was a crime, and it had a death penalty associated with it. Now, nobody's advocating for that these days, but just to say that our ancestors treated this with all seriousness and as harshly, I mean, there was no more severe penalty for any other crime than for ceding land, ceding jurisdiction, just giving it up without some sort of a fight, without the approval of the entire legislative body. And for us to do any less than treat this with the same degree of seriousness is a slap in the face to our ancestors who fought tooth and nail hundreds and hundreds of years, generation after generation, so that we could still have something left today. And if we don't do this, all we're going to be handing off to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren is one mess of a fight that will just not end. And so I think that the harsher penalties, this will be a violation of our Constitution, the willful neglect, if we do not act in the strongest possible way that this body can. This is entirely reasonable to me. This is a middle position between the weakness of injunctive relief and what many people perceived as the harshness of actually making this a criminal act. This is a good middle ground, and I intend to fully follow in my ancestors' example by saying that I will stand up to defend this land base from encroachment by foreign tribes, under threat of removal from office if I do not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Mr. Hoskin, final say-so.
Final say-so. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. And Councilor Coates has given an eloquent and passionate argument about a debate that doesn't exist, about an argument that no one's having. No one has quarreled with the thrust of this legislation. What we've debated about is whether to spend more time on some wording for something that's very serious. That ship has sailed. We're not going to spend more time than we are this evening. I understand that. I'll let that fight go. But the next discussion is whether to insert the word actual between the words assuming and notice. That's the debate we were having. Now, I understood that that was accepted as a friendly. I guess I'd ask Mr. Hembry if there's a no takebacks rule on the council, and if there is, that's fine. We can do it through a motion, because I do respect the fact that she's had a change of heart. But technically, do we need to go through a motion to at least address this issue of inserting the word, or is it really still in the legislation, notwithstanding the councilwoman's misgivings?
There had been no further action procedurally from the acceptance of the friendly amendment, and i.e. there had been no votes taken. I would be under the precept that she would be allowed to withdraw the assumption to the actual. But with the speaker's indulgence, if I could speak to that, I would want to, if you could give me time to speak as to actual and assumption. Okay. I think the example that we just had is very important as to why the word actual notice should be in there instead of assuming that notice has been happened. Because the Cherokee Nation was apparently giving notice that there had been an application to land in the trust by a foreign Native American tribe. Now, the Attorney General just found about it hours ago. The principal chief had not found out about it. So there had been no actual notice to the principal chief at this time. There had been no actual notice to the tribal council. Now, one of the jobs that I have here is to make sure that you guys are safe. That if you're going to be accused of something that is potentially a removal from office offense, that you actually have known about it by the time you get accused of it. You know, as my grandfather once said, we all know what assume means. Spell it. So what I would implore, that if that is something that is paramount as to an accusation for removal from office, and if you're going to be accused of it, that you actually had notice that you did it, that you actually knew that the applications were out there and you still did nothing. I think actual notice is paramount in that instance. I'd also, to make it more palatable, in 5B in the last sentence, it says 5B above shall be considered a willful neglect of duty. I would recommend that shall be changed to may, because that is a question of the trier of the fact, which will be up to the tribal council. But that is my suggestions.
Mr. Hopkins, you still have the floor.
And
No more
I appreciate
comments.
that, Madam Speaker. And just to dovetail on the part about actual notice, I mean, generally in the law, if there's a willful failure to do something, it's because there was an actual trigger to you failing to do something. You knew about something and you didn't do it. You willfully failed to take action. Can you willfully fail to take action about and you not know about the triggering event? I think that's problematic. So I guess I would ask, let me dispense with friendly amendments, Madam Speaker, and I actually do want to follow up on Todd's second suggestion, but let me put in the form of a motion, an amendment to section 5C to insert the word actual between assuming and notice in line 5. Put that in the form of a motion.
Second it.
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Section 5C,
5C.
line 5, between the word assuming and notice, we would insert the word actual.
So I'm understanding you to say when you say actual, you mean written, or how do you define an actual? You want written
I suppose I
notice,
could
or you-
leave that to the courts. I mean, if Larry Echohawk picks up the phone and tells Chief Baker, hey, we got an application here, that's actual notice. If it comes in the form of, however, Realty, whoever found out about it, an email or a fax, that's actual notice. I don't think we need to worry about the form of actual notice, but actual notice itself.
So do I have a second? Yes. Okay, now discussion, Ms. Coates?
My objection was not to the language, Todd. I think actual notice is good. My comment was that I don't have confidence, and I still don't have confidence, because this body had not received notice, actual or otherwise, of something that had happened that is extremely serious. And I can, I'm sorry if I'm suspicious, cynical, whatever, but I can imagine circumstances where there is deliberately not actual notice to this body until much later, so that this body doesn't have the opportunity to take the action that this legislation would give it, until perhaps a moment when it is virtually too late to do so. So that was really much more my concern than the language of actual.
Point of clarification.
It only works when there's.
Point of clarification, is the councilwoman saying she now accepts the friendly amendment? Because we can dispense with the voting if we can get to that, because
No,
I
I'm
hear
not
what
saying
you're
that. I rescinded it because I said I didn't have confidence, and I still don't.
Thank you, Mr.
We have a motion on the floor to include in front of notice, actual notice. Correct, Mr. Hoskin?
That's correct, just
Way
the
you
word
want it
actual.
written?
Correct.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Aye. Roll call. Yes, you agree with Mr. Hoskins' amendment or motion.
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
Yes.
David Walkingstick,
Yes.
Carrie Allen Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Julia Coates,
No.
Jody Fishingham,
Yes.
Meredith Rayleigh,
No.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Tom Barnes,
No.
Chuck Huskin Jr.,
Yes.
Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Lee Keener.
No.
8 yes and 7 no.
8 yes, 7 no. Your motion carries, Mr. Hoskin. Hey, Ms. Gloria Jordan, you had your hand up earlier. I skipped you, I'm sorry.
I was trying to clarify where Todd was saying that we should add the word may in lieu of shall. When he was suggesting a correction to us, and I didn't catch where he wanted that correction to be made.
Again, my paramount concern is to protect the rights of the tribal council members. When you have the word shall in a piece of legislation, that calls for mandatory action. That calls for, it says that is the action. May gives discretion to people who are enacting this statute. That gives discretion to, at some point, let's run through the scenario. At some point, there is going to be, if there's a violation of this, there's going to be an impeachment action. Okay, and part of the impeachment action is going to be based on willful neglect of duty. Now, it may or may not be willful neglect of duty based on the trier of the fact, which will be the tribal council. And impeachment or removal of office takes a 2/3 vote. So it might be just an abundance of caution, but the recommendation would be in in C, final sentence. There's a period after court, and then it says Section 5B above shall be considered willful neglect of duty as defined in Article 11, Section 1 of the Constitution of the Cherokee Nation. The recommendation would be to change shall to may, so that there would be discretion at some point in the trier of fact if there is a violation of the statute. And that's a recommendation, but obviously it's the will of the body.
And I would put that in the form of a motion. I think we need to start following every once in a while the advice of our attorney. Why do we have him here if we're not going to follow his advice? And I would put that in the form of a motion.
Moved in second that we change shall to may. All minds clear? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call.
Julia Coates,
No.
Jody Fisher-Hawk,
Yes.
Meredith Rowley,
No.
Michelle Fulbright,
No.
John Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
China Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Lee Keener,
No.
Dick Blake,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
Yes.
David Walkingstick,
Yes.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Jack Baker.
No.
7 yes and 8 no.
7 yes, 8 no. So motion fails. Okay, now we're back to Mr. Garvin.
We started our meetings today at 1 o'clock, and we had some real good reports. 3 o'clock, we had resource meeting, and real estate was there, and they reported, but what we didn't hear, I guess, is a big secret. So I'm saying that we wasn't supposed to hear that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Garvin. Mr. Lay?
I agree with Mr. Garvin. It stuns me that nobody has come to us before now with this information. I'm just stunned, and I'm upset. Anyways, Ms. Coates, nobody at this table or the chief or the deputy chief wants to cede anything. They're just talking about verbiage, and that's all. Okay? I want you to know that.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes. We've all had our say. I'd like to call for the question.
Question's been called. All in favor of this act signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Acclamation.
By acclamation, sorry. Okay, item 4 is a resolution, this covers a grant application to the Department of Justice for tribal assistance. Ms. Council.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a Department of Justice grant that requires no match. It's for a total of $500,000. There's two grants. One is for $500,000 for drug and alcohol, which would include an outpatient program for the juveniles in our existing tribal juvenile drug court. Then an additional $199,041 for meth enforcement, which would allow us to do intelligent gathering on drug cartels that are moving and selling meth specifically within the Cherokee Nation. And I move for approval.
Second.
Moved in second, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 5 is an amendment to the General Corporation Act to increase the dividend from 30% to 35%. Ms. Fishinghawk, you're the first one listed here.
I forgot my book. Hold on.
It's okay.
The purpose of this act is to increase the monthly dividend of corporation, which Cherokee Nation is the sole and majority shareholder, by 5%. And I move for its approval.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion. Ms. Calmwat?
Would you accept a friendly amendment to add in front of corporations for profit so that the Cherokee Nation Foundation and Cherokee Heritage Center and anybody else that might be considered under that as a tribal corporation's not included, nonprofit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Keener?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also have an amendment out of the same paragraph, starting with 30% to read 35% of net income. 5% of said dividend will be set aside exclusively for inpatient and outpatient contract health services as defined by Cherokee Nation Health Services Policy for Cherokee Nation, or Cherokee citizens living within the jurisdiction of the nation who are not currently served by Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services, including but not limited to for eyeglasses, dentures, prosthesis, cancer treatment, and hearing aids, provided the amount of increase over the current 30% is conditioned upon CNE and CNB remaining in compliance with the financial covenants of any credit agreement or guarantee. Cherokee Nation Health Services will monitor Claremore Indian Hospital, IHS, CHS, Miami Clinic, CHS, and Creek Nation, CHS, to ensure Cherokee Nation citizens are not being denied CHS solely because of this new program. In addition, the Board of Directors of such corporations will have the discretion to declare any special quarterly dividend that they deem appropriate.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion. Mr. Hoskin?
I thought that was a
Friendly.
friendly.
The offer is
Is
friendly.
that a friendly?
Yeah,
Okay, can that be fine? Okay.
he offered it as a friendly.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Hoskin, did you have your hand up?
Well,
Did he accept
I'm a co-sponsor, and Councilwoman Fishinghawk had the floor. I don't want to take the floor from her, although I would weigh in on his friendly if it becomes an amendment.
Okay, do you accept? She accepted, do you accept?
No, I did not accept.
Oh,
I was getting ready to ask
you
him a
did.
question. Can I go ahead?
Mr. Hoskin?
Well, Councilwoman Fishinghawk wasn't ready to accept, but she was going to ask the
Oh,
councilman.
I thought you had your
question.
hand up.
I do.
Okay.
I'm on deck.
Fire away.
The issue I see, Councilman, is that the language, and I think some of the language that you, correct me if I'm wrong, if I could direct a question to him, some of the language you read is actually already in the legislation.
That's correct. I was reading it, what it would sound like in the entirety.
Understood. I mean, it seems to me that implicit in what you're suggesting is the exclusion from the coverage of this act of Cherokee citizens who live in areas are covered by Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services, which would be Cherokees living right here in Cherokee County and Adair County. There may be another county, Sequoia County. That's essentially the thrust of it. Is that correct?
Well, no, we had lengthy discussion on this, and I want to ensure that those that qualify for any help will get it. That's the main thrust of it.
But Madam Speaker, as I read the language, the 5% goes to those who are not currently served by Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services. And those who are currently served by Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services include Cherokees that live in Cherokee County, Adair County, and I think Sequoia County. And so what I'm wanting to understand is that what the councilman's saying is that this 5%, not a penny of it, would go to Cherokees who are already receiving benefits under the Cherokee Nation Health Services. I think I'm correct, but I want some confirmation.
Mr. Keener, your response?
No, what I'm saying is, if they are eligible, and we've had lengthy discussions on this, I'm just trying to ensure that whoever gets the money will be a Cherokee citizen. Or whoever gets the aid, rather.
Madam Speaker, if I could, and if there's someone from health here, they could answer the question, but I think we've had this asked and answered many times in committee. If you're a Cherokee who lives in the Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services area, you might, for example, live in Cherokee County. I don't think you would, for example, live in Rogers County. I think I'm right about that. I think if you live in Rogers County, for example, you're under the Claremore Indian Health Services Contract Health System. So what given that scenario, Councilman, wouldn't that mean that those who live in Cherokee County would not be eligible for the 5%?
Because they would be covered.
Because they would be in a different contract health system, the Cherokee Nation. Okay, I just want to be sure
And they would
that
be
I
covered.
understand what you're suggesting here. And again, this is in the form of a friendly, I don't accept, because I think it starts to draw lines where, even though the federal government has compelled us to draw some lines, I don't think we ought to be in the business of drawing lines. I think we have mechanisms in place that we can make sure that the Cherokee citizens get this money, whether they live in Craig County, whether they live in Cherokee County, whether they live in Rogers County. I think the legislation as written will do that. And I appreciate what the councilman's trying to do, but I do think it draws lines where we ought not to be, as Cherokee Nation, in the business of drawing lines. Federal government forces us to draw some lines. We don't have to draw lines ourselves. So I don't accept it as a friendly as one of the sponsors. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Second. Are you going to make it as a motion?
Yes, I make it as a motion.
Now, discussion, Mr. Thornton, you were next. Mr. Thornton,
Yes.
didn't you have your hand up?
My next.
Yep, you're it.
No, I want to say that this act was brought up several years ago, and I was a sponsor at that time. I'd like to be a sponsor at this time.
Shelley, did you get that, Mr. Thornton? Is that all you
Thank
need? Mm-hmm. Ms. Count Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that contract health service is difficult for everyone. I appreciate when Councilman Baker was on council, he brought this forward, but I think it falls short as it's written today. So during committee, we asked to even bring up 10%, and that was declined in committee because there's such a shortfall in contract health service dollars. But it's even more grievous when, if we're looking at serving the 14 counties under the existing structure of contract health service, I think all of you have a map, you have the letter that a Claremore Indian Hospital patient would actually receive today. And if you were from Rogers County, Tulsa County, and Wagner County, you would completely not be covered by any resources that the Cherokee Nation provides, or the policy that Cherokee Nation has under contract health service, which does a better job of serving Cherokee people and other Indian people here in the 14 counties. If you're served today under Claremore Indian Hospital Contract Health Service, for example, we are lucky to even fund all of the life-threatening situations which are immediate. And often, we have to defer funding, and this is the Indian Health Service as it's administered out of the Claremore Indian Hospital rather than Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services. So for example, Rogers County is completely in both inpatient and outpatient contract health services, not served by Cherokee Nation, and the gaming dollars that so many of their residents of Rogers County work hard every day to earn to benefit Cherokee people. So today, if we do not accept the amendment that's in front of us, then the Cherokee people in Cherokee County, Adair, and Sequoyah, who are completely covered by Cherokee Nation Contract Health, they are already covered at 96%, so only 4% is ever denied in contract health service for those 3 counties. Counties, not just Rogers, Tulsa, and Wagner, which are completely covered by either Claremore Indian Hospital, Creek Nation, contract health service, and are almost routinely denied, because I will get multiple contract health service calls a day, and it brings you to tears, the basic health coverage which is denied our people. So if we're going to take additional gaming dollars out of the profits that are made at the Cherokee Nation casinos, it should benefit all Cherokee citizens, which include 11 of the 14 counties which are left out in either inpatient or outpatient or both under contract health services today. We cannot afford to just throw more money into a few counties which are already covered when we have so many people in need across the Cherokee Nation. We have 11 of those 14 counties. I don't understand why we would not want to make it clear when we hand this money over to the chief's office and ask them to administer this program, that we're going to go above and beyond what the Indian Health Service and the federal government denies our people. The only way to remedy that is to make this language clear. I thought we had this debate and I thought we had consensus on this when it left committee, but when I finally had a chance to read my book and understand what the language showed, it fell short. So we must mandate that the 11 counties currently not served by the Cherokee Nation, and thus because the federal government falls short of their commitment to the Cherokee Nation and our people, we have to put this language in. Otherwise, it won't work under the way the regulations of Contract Health Service Administration are administrated. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Ms. Gloria Jordan.
It's going to shock you, but I do agree with Councilor Watts on one thing. This motion does fall short. The motion on the floor will exclude Sequoyah, Adair, and Cherokee County. It's divisive. We talked about this in committee. The one that we have in the book will assure that all 14 counties are treated equally. I would direct this comment to Mr. Keener. You want to assure that it's used for Cherokees. The last sentence in the book says, funds expended under this section shall be expended to Cherokee Nation citizens who reside anywhere within the 14-county jurisdictional area. That's the part that I totally disagree with you coming up with this motion and excluding 3 counties. You are assured by the one that is in the book that this money will only be used for Cherokee Nation citizens. Folks, this is just a power grab by folks up north. Our folks need to be treated to this money too. We fall short in taking care of our contract health needs. Sequoyah County falls short. Adair County falls short. Cherokee County falls short. And if you pass this tonight, we'll assure that those 3 counties won't be taken care of at all.
Were you directing a question to him?
No,
Oh,
my comment.
okay, just your comment. Mr. Walkingstick?
Councilman Keener, the 2,700 denials that was brought up by Mr. Grimes, of the Cherokees. George Valerie, sorry. Sequoyah, Adair, and Cherokee counties are our largest Cherokee populations. And I'm assuming of the 2,700 denials that a large percentage of those 2,700 were from those counties. I'm assuming.
No.
They weren't. Mr. Valerie's statement,
It's a complex issue, but that would be IHS, which those three counties that you keep alluding to are not covered by.
okay, well,
96% of Sequoia, Cherokee, and Adair County are being served as of right now.
well, that was my comment. Yeah, I'm finished. Thank you, Speaker.
Mr. Keener?
Yes, I did want to comment on that, and I would like to, if you would indulge me, I'd like to read this for the record, please. Cherokee Nation citizens and all other federally recognized citizens in some parts of the Cherokee Nation are served at a 96% approval rate for Cherokee Nation contract health services. Whereas Cherokee Nation citizens in Wagner, Washington, Nowata, Craig, Mays, Delaware, McIntosh, Muskogee, Rogers, and Tulsa counties, and some of those are in the south, are frequently served by Claremore Indian Hospital, Indian Health Service, IHS, inpatient or outpatient CHS at approval rates less than 50%. If additional precious tribal revenues such as Cherokee Nation businesses, net income or profits are poured into Cherokee Nation CHS, they will not benefit Cherokee Nation citizens, but all federally recognized tribal citizens living in the jurisdiction of the nation. In addition, the quality of life divide for Cherokee Nation citizens living in Wagner, Washington, Nowata, Craig, Mays, Delaware, McIntosh, Muskogee, Rogers, and Tulsa counties will not be remedied. To fulfill our commitment to all Cherokee Nation citizens, and not just a few, we must designate tribal monies to uplift the tribal citizens in the aforesaid counties, and who are left without adequate health care when forced to rely on Claremore Indian Hospital. After approval with this, Cherokee Nation Health Services will bring a CHS policy to the council for review and approval. Once approved, Cherokee Nation Health Services should actively work with Claremore IHS to monitor their CHS program to ensure Cherokee Nation citizens are not discriminated against and denied just because additional funds are being provided by the tribe as a safety net. Ensure all Cherokee Nation citizens of the aforementioned counties are informed of the program and how to access the program. For the protection of the thousands of northeastern Oklahoma families we serve by providing jobs and economic development, we are excited to provide these safeguards for protecting the economic development funds we need to diversify beyond gaming while preserving necessary tribal programs and services. So as we've been in committee meetings time and again discussing these in I think 3 different various committees, we all understand that IHS is a very complicated animal or beast, if you will. And all this does is to ensure that any Cherokee citizen, and even though I've been accused of not being sensitive to the Sequoia, Adair, and Cherokee counties, it will address all the needs outside of that because those 3 counties are being served right now. The 4% that aren't being served at a 50% dissatisfaction rate in our area, I'm sorry, the 96% being provided services in those 3 counties, the 4%, I'm not sure they would even qualify even if we did have additional monies. I'm not sure of that. But I do know that there is a real need to address all the health care problems for the other counties that are not within that jurisdiction to help them as much as we can, because as of right now, they are being helped, but it could be better, and this is what this amendment would stand for, to help those disenfranchised, if you will, of the Cherokee Nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Keener, Ms. Fishinghall.
I agree with Tina. I agree it falls short. I think it's selfish, greedy, short-sighted, discriminatory in a nutshell. I cannot believe I heard tonight that Adair, Sequoia, and Cherokee County's healthcare needs are all being covered. I'm looking at this piece of legislation, and it's limited to, it's including but not limited to, and it's naming eyeglasses and prosthetics. Folks, you want to know where your three biggest counties of diabetics are? Who'd have thought? Adair, Cherokee, and Sequoia County. And you're just now saying, and I heard you right, once again, it addresses all outside of the three counties. I just now heard it, I'm quoting. Taking the gaming revenues, yes, it should benefit all Cherokees. I feel like we're going down that same path the Creeks did here a while back when they was wanting to take their gaming revenues and put it in the Creek tribal accounts. Do you remember that fight that they went through here a while back? Well, we're going the same way. I thought when we come out of the committee that there was a consensus, but I'm looking at this piece of paper again, and once again, it's got a bunch of red on it, and once again, it says, who are not currently served by the Cherokee Nation Contract Health Services. So that little who are not says Sequoia County ain't getting no money, Cherokee County is not getting any, and neither is Adair County. Folks, it's discriminatory and it's a bad piece of legislation, and I'm gonna stand up to all the people and vote no. And I call for the question.
We have one person, Mr. Thornton, that hasn't spoke yet. This is on this amendment.
Well, I don't know where they're getting this 96%. I never have when they came up with it. I still don't believe it. I think the 96% is dealing mainly with eyeglasses and dentures and prosthesis. I think that's where it's dealing with. If you go to contract health at Fred Bird Smith, I guarantee you there's not 96% of the people receiving contract help for something like cancer, heart patients, anything that would be cause of death, because I'm telling you, they're not getting it. I get calls every damn month from people that's not receiving contract health when they need it the worst, you know. And we can't afford all these, you know, they're right, I apologize. But we could take all the money we've got. What, $100 million, $500 million? 75 million, yeah, I heard it was 100. Okay. We could take $75 million and use it all up in this next year to help our people and help. But why do that rape ourselves? You know, and I don't feel that Sequoia and Adair and Cherokee are being served 96%. Because I live there and I hear it every day, and I know that these people make trips to Redbird and to, what church is it? Wilma Mankiller, over to Muskogee, and I'm telling you, we're not getting served 97, 96%. I don't care what they say. But I'm gonna have to vote against it. And I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time to speak. I'd like to call for the question.
The question has been called. All in favor of Mr. Keener's motion on this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call, please. Yes, as you agree with the amendment.
David Thornton,
No.
David Walkingstick, Eric Allen Watts,
Yes.
Bill England,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Julia Coates,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
No.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr., Tanya Gloria Jordan,
No.
Lee Keener,
Yes.
Dick Blake, Curtis Snell.
No.
Seven yes and 8 no.
7 yes, 8 no. Mr. Keener, your motion fails. So we'll go back to the original legislation.
Call for the question.
Question has been called. This is an act, so roll call.
I had my hand up before it's call for question.
Keener, I'm
I'd
sorry, I
like-
didn't see you.
I'd like to put into motion, or another motion to amendment, if I may. A one-time dividend of $35 million will be paid to the Cherokee Nation by December 1, 2011, to be set aside for a cash reserve for the Cherokee Nation government. Any cash reserve above the 1.75% cash reserve set aside as specified in the Legislative Act 0502 can only be accessed for specified purposes as approved by 2/3 of the tribal council.
Second.
Moved in second, any discussion on this, Mr. Hoskin?
I think it's an interesting idea that deserves some discussion, and this isn't the proper vehicle for it. If it's appropriate, I'd move to table that to committee, not the act itself, but the idea. I think it's a very intriguing idea that we ought to study. I don't know that I've heard from Cherokee Nation businesses what impact that would have on the Job Growth Act, things like that. I'd be very interested to hear that, because I think the councilman idea is a very interesting one that's worth pursuit. But I'd hope you'd agree with me that we might want to spend more than the 10 minutes or so that we're going to be chatting about it tonight.
Can we table a motion? He doesn't want to table the whole thing, he just wants to table that motion.
No, you cannot table an amendment opinion for you would just.
Try, Mr. Hoskin.
I would suggest, Madam Speaker, it's not germane to the legislation, and for that reason should be struck. And we can take it up at committee.
Ms. Calhoun Watts.
Madam Speaker, I'm asking you for a ruling on that. I would suggest that it's not germane to the legislation, so it's an appropriate amendment.
That is, you want to strike that particular provision?
I think his motion isn't germane to the legislation and should be struck for that reason. And we can certainly take it up at next month's committee meeting. Again, I fully support the idea of discussing it, just not in the 10 minutes that we're going to be discussing it now.
So you want to strike that?
Yeah,
provision?
and maybe Mr. Hembry can give us some guidance, but I don't think it's germane.
What would be, where we're at right now is that an amendment has been made by Mr. Keener. Mr. Hoskin has objected to that as not germane to the topic at large, to the main motion. You as Speaker have to make a ruling on that, whether this motion, or whether Mr. Keener's amendment is germane to the main motion or not. If you rule that, well, however you rule, any tribal council member can appeal your decision to the main body, which a majority vote would rule.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Hoskin because I believe this is something that we need to get Mr. Stewart's input. So I'm going to deny that motion. Sorry. Thanks, Todd, for putting it on me.
Sorry. That's why you got the gavel.
Mr. Keener, can you bring that forward at perhaps the Executive and Finance Committee meeting? And in the meantime, speak with Mr. Stewart?
Okay.
Mr. Stewart, have you been consulted about this yet? No. Okay. Good idea, Mr. Hopkins.
Every once in a while.
Okay, so we're back to the motion to approve this amendment. Roll call, yes, as you agree with the amendment, the 5%. What was that?
Never mind, it's fine.
The amendment for profit.
Just point of clarification.
Yeah, clarify, would you?
Now you're asking us to vote on the original act that was in the book. Okay, and a yes vote is to pass the original act as it came out of committee.
With the one friendly amendment that says for profit.
The for-profit. Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
All minds clear? Okay, roll call.
Jack Baker,
No.
Joanna Coates,
No.
Jody Fishenhoff,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
Yes.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Hannah Porter Jordan,
Yes.
Lee Keener,
No.
Dick Blake,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
Yes.
David Walker
Yes.
Stick, Colin Watts,
No.
Bill England.
Yes.
Eleven yes and 4 no.
11 yes, 1 no. Motion carries. to be based on Mr. Stewart's profits. Okay, motion carries. It's down to item 6, and it's an act amending the budget, and it's mod 2. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This budget mod increases our budget by more than $857,000. It includes total grants of $167,000, which includes in the grants documentation and coding improvements of $113,000, FEMA disaster relief of $42,000. It also increases the budget authority of $689,000, which is capital improvement reserve of $250,000 for the Supreme Court temporary location remodel, a registration database of $100,000, a Veterans Center $231,000, increase the Cherokee Nation security of $71,000, and this increases our total budget to more than $475 million. I make a motion that it be approved by acclamation.
Second, moved and seconded by acclamation. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have any announcements? I'd like to recognize a couple of ladies from Mays County. We have Muggs, well, her real name's Geraldine, but I only know her as Muggs, and her sister Jit, whose real name is Sandra. Glad you're here. Any other, yes, Mr. Thornton?
I'd like to recognize a couple from Sequoia County, Lacey Horn and her husband. I don't really know his name, so you would say it, it would help me.
I'm Gary Kaufman.
I'm Lacey Horn from Vian.
And they have a little Dotson, isn't it? And his name is Jack?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Thank you.
Any other, yes, Mr. Keener?
I'd like to thank the council tonight for voting unanimously on the Land into Trust Act. I think the land of the Cherokee Nation is inextricably linked to the well-being of the nation. And I do want to go on record and say I don't have anything against Sequoia here County. I just want everything to be equitable for all of Cherokee Nation.
I'd like to recognize all the rest of the constituents that came tonight.
Announcements? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.